Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Be Freaking Awesome podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sami Kinnison, joined by my mom and co-host, Angela Belford. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about, Angela, your trip to Costa Rica. For those of you who may not know, we recorded all of our episodes in February within January so that Angela and my dad, it's weird, we keep going back and forth, mom and dad. Anyway, so that you guys go work from Costa Rica for 5 weeks, really. It's more than a month. It was 5 whole weeks that you guys were there, lived, worked, played, did the whole thing. You got back this past week on March 1st. Tell us about it. Like, why did you go to Costa Rica? How was it? I don't know. Why'd you go?
Well, for starters, when you write a book called Be Freaking Awesome, I say it is on brand to have a cool life. So it is, I am morally obligated to have a cool life. And so therefore, that is one thing. Number two, I've never liked the cold. I've always prioritized getting away for at least a week in January, February, because seasonal affective disorder is real, y'all. So like, I need some sunshine. Number three, when after COVID, so much of the world got so used to Zoom that I 2 years ago looked at Barry and was like, you live your whole life on Zoom. I live my whole life on Zoom. Why don't we go Zoom somewhere warm? And the world's opening up quite a bit more, obviously, but still wanted to have that experience. And so what we're also looking at is we both turned 50 this year and plan to someday retire-ish and want to do some. I mean, when you love what you do, are you really retired? And also want to invest in some vacation property. And so we are kind of systematically exploring Central America and the Caribbean to find where we might want to buy some property. So we go and travel slow, meaning we stay for multiple weeks. Last year we did Key Largo. 10 weeks was way too long. That's what I learned from last year. 10 weeks was way too long. And I just felt super disconnected from everybody when I got back. 5 weeks was perfect. I would say that was ideal for us because we took a few days at the beginning, kind of vacationed, explored, started work. When we got back last year, when we went to Key Largo, we vacationed before we got to Key Largo and had to start work like the day we got there, which was a little bit jarring. So this was, I guess, a little bit similar, but anyway, it worked out really well. So we would work Monday through Thursday, and then we would play on the weekends. Had a lot of fun. I don't know. I was going to say follow me on Instagram, but actually I think I did my post on Facebook. I really should do my Facebook or my Instagram post. If you followed me on Instagram, you were seeing my stories of my sunsets every day. But so that is why we picked Costa Rica, is that we wanted somewhere warm to go in February because I hate the cold. After I lost my weight a couple of years ago, I get cold like really easy. I'm cold all the time. So had to go somewhere.
I think we talked about that on a different podcast episode at one point, that you're just like, it's sort of kind of the family joke that mom's always cold, no matter what.
Key Largo wasn't warm enough. Like we literally had days in Key Largo that it was 45 degrees and overnight. And it was like, no. And that was a fluke and it was a weird thing, whatever. But we liked the cold weather that we saw in San Jose at 67. It was chilly. Anyway, so yeah, we had a great time and rappelled waterfalls, did zip lining, explored. I should write a blog post, all the fun things that I did. So.
All the freaking awesome things that you did.
All the freaking awesome things that I did. But I also learned some things. And so I wanted to take podcast episode not to brag about how awesome the journey was. Although I say to people all the time, I am your goal setting. I can give you goal setting for empty nest. So your nest is empty.
Yeah, because me in the opposite season of life, I've got 2 littles. I've got a 4-year-old and a 9-month-old. And I'm like, the thought of being able to travel for 5 weeks, like if I could get 5 days, like that sounds a dream right now. So I can get 5 days and I will. We're taking vacations, but you know, all of that. I also think we can talk a little bit just about travel in general. So to kind of kick us off with some, interview questions for you, different lessons you've learned. Let's talk about your travel mindset. How do you approach travel?
Yeah, I would say I was thinking about how easy it is now for Barry and I to travel, and especially like we kind of shift into gear when we're doing like the airport and the transitions, and we have such a beautiful flow now. And it is hard fought. There are some really messy arguments that have taught us things over the years. Like I could think about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we went to St. Kitts for the first time. And Barry's like, we have to be at the airport 2 hours early. And so we need to leave our house 3 hours early. And I'm like, it is 22 minutes to the airport. Like, why do we have to leave 3 hours early? I don't understand. And so over time, I have become more appreciative of having a little bit of wiggle room and a little bit of margin. I've had just a couple too many where there was an accident on the way to the airport and I hadn't allowed a lot of time, that I was like, okay, I don't like this feeling of anxiety. So one of the things I like to do is to plan some margin in there. And
Hold on. Can I just interject on that? Because I think that a lot of people are like, yeah, of course, for an international trip, you should get to the airport 2 hours early. But there was like a point in time, we live in an area with a smaller airport. I remember like sometimes the big long wait in security is like 15 minutes instead of like 2 people in line. And you're like, whoa, right. Crazy. So there has been a long season of life where it's like, no, you can show up at the airport like an hour and a half or even an hour sometimes before your plane takes off. And you will have no problems whatsoever. And
I've shown up at the airport 15 minutes before boarding time. So if the boarding starts at 5:30, I've gotten to the airport at 5:15, especially if I'm not having to park. And I'm still getting to the gate plenty of time.
And so I just wanted to clarify, though, because that is your norm. And I think that more people probably are closer to Dad's norm of, no, I need to be here very early, all the things. And so where you're talking about, let's allow for some margin. This is a change and a shift from, I remember even like with us kids, like there are times where like, I feel like we're getting to the airport too close to time. And you're like, we're fine. Everybody's fine. Like it'll be okay.
We never missed a flight. So
yeah, not out of X&A. So
no. I have figured out that there are some big rocks I have to have. And I love being spontaneous and I love being flexible and I love trying different things. And I have discovered that I have to know where I'm going to sleep. Like it was very common when the kids were growing up that we would go on road trips and I didn't care so much about where I slept because I don't know, when we get tired, then we'll find a place or we'll just drive through the night. And I do have a lot of confidence, depending on where I'm going, that, I can just grab a quick hotel. I'm a premium Priceline member, right? But I have learned that on these bigger trips that I want to know where I'm going to sleep because I get really anxious. And I've found that it brings up my experience of homelessness. And this is probably normal people. Oh, look, Angela's finally normal at 50. And this is what most people have planned. I've known people that are like, they planned a year in advance, right? Which is beautiful and amazing. And that's just something different. We didn't plan we were coming back. We were like, well, when we get back we don't know if what time we're going to go to San Jose, where we're going to stay. We knew there were enough hotels. So we planned everything except for our San Jose couple of days. We planned that a couple of weeks before we left, and then 2 days before we went back to San Jose. So I would say we have big planning and a lot of flexibility is one of the things, because we have stumbled across some very cool things. We'll be like downtown Miami Beach and stumble upon the Art Deco Festival. And I feel like that there's times when people like plan so rigidly with their schedule that they don't have time to be spontaneous and explore and find new things. On this trip, we hiked up to this kind of overlook that looked over the city, and it was a little bit of a hike, and we had heard at a bar that you could also hike on over the mountain. Anyway, that's a hilarious story that is like, oh, you definitely should have walked back down and gotten a taxi, because but it's only 6 or 7 kilometers. We've done a 5K. It's no problem. It was the hottest part of the day. We didn't know where we were going. Google Maps said we weren't even on a road. It's hilarious. We have a great
hilarious now,
story.
Probably less hilarious while you were lost in the woods.
Well, we were on a path the whole time. Just Google couldn't find us. And so we weren't actually lost in the woods. I was proud of both of us because we both were laughing while it was happening. We both felt confident enough that we were like, worst case, we'll turn around and retrace our steps and we know where we're going. And so figuring out what that risk factor is for you is huge. And so anyway, then we end up at this little town, and then we end up at like hearing about this surfing competition that's happening at sunset. And we had left that day just to explore. And so it was really fun. So I think the best travel mindset is to plan with flexibility, figure out what your big rocks are. My big rock is not food. I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure out food. I carry protein bars with me everywhere. I will never be without food. I got a little bit worried about water on actually that hike across, because I was like, wow, we did not think this was going to be this far, and we didn't take quite enough water. But planning with flexibility, best mindset for travel.
I heard a thing on a different podcast I was listening to, Hillary Rushford, and her podcast. She talked about understanding the type of travel that you and maybe your friends or your family like to do can be really important. And so the 3 things that she had outlined is there are people who like to do. And so there's like, you want to experience things, you want to go to museums, you want to go like do the things. There are people who like to be. And so you want to go like sit in a cafe on the street and like watch and like be in the neighborhood and really just experience sort of local life. And then there are people who want to shop. This one I understand a little less. It's just not necessarily my MO, but there is something about like, no, I want to go experience the shopping at this place, and I want to go to all the different stores and do the window shopping and do the stuff like that. And so those are the 3 things that she identified. And knowing where you are and where your travel companions are can be really helpful to be like, oh, why have we planned the whole day and scheduled everything when I just wanted to go sit in a coffee shop or sit at the beach and watch what was happening? Or the opposite, you're like, why are we just sitting here when I want to go check out the stores and go see what's going on and all of these things? So I thought that was really interesting. I'm definitely a split between do and be.
Well, what I was going to say is that the beautiful thing about slow travel is I was all 3 over the course of that. And I had different days that I just like didn't want to, but we had friends that came and visited with us, and they were mostly be people. Like they could just sit at the beach and just watch the ocean. And the first day that they were there, I was still in between. Like I had to work half a day, and then I was with them, and then we had an excursion, and then I had to work another half day. So I was still kind of in work mode. So I was having a really hard time just sitting and being. But then another day they were totally cool. Like their last day there, like, no, we want to shop. Now we've sat and watched the beach long enough. And because we knew this a little bit about them with the bee, we planned excursions like every other day. They did not feel like, now I asked them, and at the end they said, we did not have any time to be. Our off day was completely off. And I was like, we were completely off. We sat at the beach all day. We went to dinner at 5:30. We met friends at the brewery at 8, and then we went to bed. That was a B day. We didn't do anything. And they were like, your definition of not doing anything is very different than ours. And I was like, oh, so I think you're right. I think she's right.
Yeah.
I think of shopping, though, also as going to retail museums. So to me, it's like going to a retail art gallery. I think even the little tchotchkes that they sell, I love seeing all the different types of things that they sell. I literally went to every single shop that was in. I mean, I had plenty of time, all the souvenirs, and I thought it was entertaining, like why these souvenirs were selected, who was selling what, how much they were charging. I think all of that stuff is interesting and fascinating. And I can just do a little bit of museums. They kind of, sometimes I get bored doing museums.
Very interesting. I'm the opposite. I could care less about shopping. I have to remind myself, oh yeah, maybe you should think about a souvenir or buying something for other people. And like, It's like when I went to Europe and especially Paris, like there's a lot of really good shopping in Paris, and I really wanted nothing to do with it. And I went through the Invalides Museum, the Rodin Museum, the Musée d'Orsay, the Louvre. Like I loved all those. I didn't love the Contemporary Art Museum. That was really boring. Anyway, continuing to move forward. Is there anything that surprised you about Costa Rica or your trip in general?
Yes, I had planned this. We booked our 30-day Airbnb back in October, so I knew this was coming. I was surprised how activated my nervous system was, which we talk a lot about here, but just I don't feel like I'm an anxious person, but I just felt like a low-level buzzing and could not relax and settle down the first like 4 or 5 days that we were there. Some of it was when we were in San Jose. It is not a tourist town. It is a million people or a little bit more in San Jose, and we did not know the language. And you needed to know the language because it is not a tourist town. And so that was unnerving to me, even though I had Google Translate, even though I felt more awkward and weird. Then when we get to Jaco, it's a tourist town. It's 100% a beach town. Every single restaurant, people are speaking English. Like they speak Spanish too, but only when we would wander in the side streets and go to like the local restaurants. And even still, then Google Translate did fine with us. So that I knew that in my brain. I didn't recognize what that was going to do in terms of me feeling unsettled, that I couldn't just chit chat with somebody on a bus or on, the waiter. Where are you? Are you from here? How long have you been here? That sort of thing. So that was a little bit surprising. That was a lot surprising and very frustrating.
I think that you had a similar experience when you were in Paris as well, of the language. I remember getting a phone call from you when you were in Paris and I was here in the States, and you were like, I'm in the bathroom of this museum and I'm having a really hard time. And I think that the language, I don't know if you would agree, but just reflecting back, that was a huge part of it, is not being able to communicate what you need and communicate with others.
Yes, at some point you would think I would learn the language of the place I go. I just think the people that I know that learn the language, I mean, it takes them like 6 or 7 years to get good at the language. So to me, it feels like I don't have capacity to invest in that. But yes, it was. So thank you for pointing that out, because then I can see that, it still happened, but it was much less degree. Yeah. So it'll be interesting because we've already selected our next February adventure. And it's also primary language is not English. So we'll see if I transition a little bit better that time.
What else?
Or maybe I just have to recognize it and go, okay, I'm still willing to do it. And I would say I picked up a lot of Spanish while I was there, a lot. Mm-hmm. And I still don't feel like I can speak the language. I feel like I can say some nouns.
Yeah. This is sort of like, I don't know Spanish, I know French, and people were like, oh, you got to learn it. And I'm like, I swear, if I say baño and look really confused, someone will point me to a bathroom. Like, you don't actually need to know how to say donde está baño, el baño, or whatever. You just need to say baño.
Baño. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Cerveza, por favor. Dos.
Hola.
Cerveza. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I got so good at hola, buenos dias. Because everywhere you go, that's the greeting is buenos dias or buenas. One cab driver, I was telling this to a group of people that we had ridden on a little boat taxi and we were all in the same shuttle. And I was like, none of them knew Spanish. And so I was like, look, if you say Buenos Dias, like it'll get you a lot of places. And the taxi driver goes, it's Buenos Tardes right now. Like, yeah, I know it's the afternoon. I'm aware of that, but I'm telling you, it's fine. I did get good at saying, Buenos noches to the, as well. So
Good
I
night,
picked
good
up
evening.
good evening. Yeah. Good evening. So I liked that. You could say, and then you figured out that people also Buenos. And you're like, okay, cool. Hi. Hey, which is just good. Fine.
Good.
I'm good. Yeah. Buenos. Yeah. Anyway, it's just you could make an attempt. I would say the Spanish speaking, so far, my experience with Spanish speaking culture compared to French speaking culture is that Spanish speaking culture is much more welcoming, accepting, kind. It's interesting. The last couple of days we were there, Pura Vida is the slogan of Costa Rica. And so it's pure life. And so when we would be like, Buenos Dias, or, we're saying goodbye forever to people, like we're probably never going to see you again. So we would be like, Pura Vida. And everybody's like, yes, Pura Vida. It's like the answer to everything. It's Hakuna Matata, whatever. So no comment about, you can leave the Francophone.
No. I just like a teeny little ad. I think that I wouldn't necessarily agree that all French speakers, I would agree that Parisian French speakers.
I should. Yes. Thank you for saying that, because I had a lovely time in south of France.
Right. I was like, there are other places in France where there are people that even if they don't know the language, they are going to don't know your language. They're still going to make a really good effort. Paris is not necessarily going to be known for that. So
yeah, it's hard because Paris, and then having a Canadian husband who, the Quebec world is not also known pretty, for they're not known for being very welcoming and accepting. That's just the cultural personality. Yeah. I met more people from Montreal than I've ever met, and they were lovely and amazing. So just like anything, there's a culture, and then you have to judge each person individually. Yeah. I'm just saying the Spanish speaking culture. If I were going to pick another language to actually dive deep and learn, it would be Spanish, because I had a great experience.
Is it bad that I'm like, you should learn French because Spanish people are more willing to work with you on English, but French people are less likely, right? So you should learn French like me. That's okay. I remember going to Holland, and people who speak Dutch, they wouldn't even give me a chance to practice. They were like, oh, I want to practice my English so bad. Please let me practice my English. I was like, I just want to practice a little bit of Dutch. They're like, no, this is amazing. I want to speak English so bad. Anyway, so.
That's so cute. Okay. The other thing that I would say the other thing that surprised me was, this sounds so, I'm telling you, I'm judging myself by saying this. I judge myself saying it, and then now I'm going to put it on a podcast, but
for the whole world to see, hear. World.
And now that snippet. Anyway, I was surprised that I had to struggle with disappointment. And not like the overall trip, but there was this 1 week that I was just so bummed out and so what is going on? What is wrong? And it was a weekend that I had planned to go and do this thing. And then it was we couldn't get a rental car, or the rental car was crazy more expensive than we originally had looked at. And just plans changed, and Barry came up with a different alternative. And I was so disappointed. I didn't even know to call it disappointed. I was like, what is wrong with me? You're in this glorious place. You should feel amazing all the time. No, you're still just a human. You're still just having an experience. I had to reconcile boredom because the sun sets in Costa Rica every night about 5:45. And it is very difficult to be in a very warm place and the sun sets at 5:45, because when it's that warm here in Arkansas, it's 8:30, 9 o'clock. I mean, later in the summer, later than that. And so when the sun sets about an hour later, it's time for bed. And so I really would be tired a lot. And then when the sun came up, we I would notice I would be up within about 15, 20 minutes because it wakes up at 5:45. I mean, rises between 5:45 and 6 in the morning too. That's 12 hours of sunlight, which is glorious and amazing, but also it was just an odd feeling. And then it was like, if you weren't going to a bar and you weren't going to a restaurant, then you couldn't do the things you wanted to do at night. And so then you had to reconcile boredom. So negative feelings still happen when you're doing this really cool, awesome life.
Yeah.
Fun things.
Yeah. So what about like tips? What about things? What would you recommend to other people about travel or about Costa Rica? Whatever it may be.
I shared this on Facebook with folks about how I transition, especially after these longer trips. And I've done this in Florida, and then I did Europe, and then now this one. And one of the things that I do for the last couple of days that I'm there, and what's fun is that other people on Facebook are like, oh, I do that too. Yeah, that is helpful. Is that I begin to make a list of all the things that I will not miss about this place. And then I even let myself get kind of annoyed by them. So like our internet was very shoddy at our apartment. We ended up working at a co-working space, and our electricity was inconsistent if I ran the dryer, I would have to turn off one of the air conditioners in our apartment, and that didn't even always work. We'd lose electricity. You'd be in a restaurant and the electricity would just go out usually for just 15, 20 seconds, but still like one of them, we were in this huge restaurant. There's probably 200 people in there. Electricity just goes out. Everybody looks around for like 10 or 12 seconds. It's weird. It's just an oddity. So that I wouldn't miss. And so I let myself make a list of everything that I don't like about it. And then I just get really annoyed. So that way, when I get home, then I like start also making a list of things that I miss about home. Like, oh, I miss this person. Oh, I miss my pillows. I really missed my pillows. I didn't sleep very well while I was in Costa Rica. And what's terrible is that then when you don't sleep, then you do a little more caffeine, which then makes you not sleep, which then anyway. So I was very happy to get my really comfy bed and my pillows back. My cats, love them. They were keeping me up.
We sort of joked. I asked her, who did she miss more? Was it her children or her cat children? And how does the list go, Angela?
The grandchildren, then the cats, then the kids.
Then the kids. That's fine.
Well, because the kids I can actually call. I can have Zoom calls with them if I want. I mean, we could have given you a Zoom call with your cat. Oh, Lexi was texting me pictures. Anyway, so anyway, then but here's the reason why. And you made this point in one of our reels, is that it was very cool to go and rappel in a waterfall in Costa Rica, but I want to be present and content and happy wherever I am. And I want to be able to find joy where I am. And so I walked in my garage last night and I was like, oh my gosh, I love my basement. Like last year, our basement flooded and it's been remodeled. And I was like, oh, I love my basement. Does my basement still need to be cleaned? Yes. Is there still trim? Yes, there is. But I want to be the kind of person that really loves where I am. And so I think that desire is actually what then is surprising when I'm disappointed when I'm there, is because I'm like, no, I'm the kind of person who loves wherever I am. I would say my kind of character flaws a little bit is that I'd like to be where I am, which means I'm not always great about checking in on people back here, which is also the reason why I think 10 weeks was too long and 5 was better, because I could remind myself I still needed to check on my people. But I take that to such a degree that I will go a week and a half and forget to have texted one of my kids, and be like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do that. I can't figure out if that's like some of it is from my childhood of like bouncing around with family. So I don't know. It's weird. But so that's one thing I don't love about myself. is that forgetting, but I do like being where I am. And so making that list of things that I really like about my house, like about my kids, like about my schedule, liked getting in a car. We hadn't driven a car in 5 weeks. We'd barely ridden in a car for like 4 of the weeks. Like we took our bikes everywhere. And so we rode in buses more than we rode in cars probably. And so even it was nice just to drive ourselves somewhere. So anyway, that's kind of a tip for transition. And I guess a tip for life too, is make a list of all the things that you love. Because I think sometimes, I mean, it's often said that people will spend more time planning their 2-week vacation than they do planning the rest of their life where they live. And so I was thinking about like, what are the excursions that we could do on the weekends here in Northwest Arkansas? Because we worked Monday through Thursday, then we went and played on the weekends. And how am I playing better? Can I use this experience to remind me to live the rest of my time here better?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think we talk about the being freaking awesome, sort of that point of the reel. It's not the rappelling down the waterfalls that makes life freaking awesome. It's the living life to the fullest wherever you are at, in whatever season you are, however you are.
Oh my, yeah. Like this was not my life when I was 30 something, because I was raising kids. I had little bitty kids. I have people that are like, oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. I wish I could do that. And there's other people that didn't start having kids till the middle of their 30s. And so they're a little longer to do that. But I can remember they used to take, trips to Jamaica, and I was super jealous. And I wish I could take a 7-day trip to Jamaica when I'm 26 or 30 or whatever. And I couldn't because I had little bitty kids. And so I also try to be the kind of person that loves what season I'm in. So whatever that season is. Mm-hmm. We're 50 now. We're very active. We were on excursions a lot with people that were 70. A lot that happened because that's more typical. People that are retired age are doing those sort of things. And we have personally made a list of things that we want to do before we're 70, and then the things that we can do after we're 70. And I was sharing this with one of the people that I met, that we ended up hanging out with the second time. I did that a couple of times where we met somebody on an excursion and then we hung out later. And she said, once about 65 to 70, she said, you're just a little more careful. And she said, it takes a little longer to recover. And so like, I wouldn't rappel the waterfalls because if I broke something, it's going to take me a lot longer to recover. And so I'm going to do this beach experience. I'm still going to do the things, but I'm not going to necessarily take as many risks. And she said, I think you're very wise to, while you're still strong and young and active, do those more active types of vacations that you want to do. I want to do Machu Picchu. That's a lot of hiking. And so I want to do that in the next 5 years, just to be aware that at 70, you're not going to do Machu Picchu.
Yeah, you're not going to hike it at least.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So, Costa Rica, overall, if you could sum it up, did you like it?
I did like it. I think everybody should go try it. I will not be buying a house there. I probably won't be going back anytime soon. It was fine. It was fun. And still keep looking.
There you go.
For a long term.
Thanks everybody for joining us. And I hope that you guys were able to take something from this, whether it's a little travel tip or a life tip. If you guys go, you can sign up for our email list, get a little bit of behind the scenes, like and share with your friends who you think might enjoy it. But for now, hope you guys go and be freaking awesome.